A January 2021 study says eating later and the time at which you sleep will predict your body fat percentage. Find out the details here today on Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website, and as always, you can engage live in the content. Come follow me. I'm over here on Instagram. It's where all the cool kids are. Just follow Jimmy Rants over at Instagram. We do go live Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, right here on IG Live at the Jimmy Rants page. So thank you guys so much for being here today. We also simulcast live over on the Twitch feed, which if you follow me on Twitch, it's an easy to download app. Just download the Twitch app and go follow Jimmy Moore Rants, and you'll find the show over there. We also simulcast on my Facebook page. Thank you, where I see Sharon just popped in. Thank you guys for being here today. And then finally over on the YouTube feed, thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. If you missed the live, you can watch it on the replay right here on the Jimmy Rants feed. Just go to the IGTV just as soon as this is over. I upload it immediately to IGTV. I also upload it over on YouTube. Usually within an hour after the show is done, it's up on YouTube for you to watch there. And then finally go on over to the official website for this show. It is JimmyRants.com. And while you're there, you can access all the past episodes. Speaking of YouTube, by the way, today is Thursday, and on Thursdays I have a podcast called Real Talk. So this is a show, I sometimes talk about nutritional health, but a lot of times I talk about things that are just real life. And so today's guest is this man right here, Dr. Brett Hill. And Brett and I have been really good friends. He lives in Australia. He's a chiropractor in Adelaide, Australia. And he wrote this book, Rock Bottom. Highly, highly, highly recommend this. If you've ever been through some stuff in your life and trying to pick up the pieces of where to go next. So Brett went through a pretty tough time over the past 5 to 10 years, and he shows you how he came out of that. Really great conversation. It helps that he and I are friends. I've actually spoken to his patients in Adelaide, Australia in the past when he was going through some of that stuff, and I even noticed it at the time. So anyway, great conversation. Go check it out over at the YouTube feed. We got the video of the podcast, or if you want to listen to the podcast, just go to llvlc.com. All right, you guys, as you know, on Jimmy Rants, one of my favorite things to do is to take a study and to break it down, because I think there's a lot of research that comes out there that gets a lot of attention that doesn't deserve to get a lot of attention. And sometimes when you hear me rant about these studies, these bad studies, you quickly see why they're so bad. Well, sometimes there are some pretty good studies out there, and these are the studies you don't really hear a lot about. And so I have one such study here today that is related to why you may be carrying around extra body fat. Now, this was really fascinating. This literally is hot off the presses. Just came out January 2021. The last few days has come out. And it's all about the timing of your meals, when you eat meals, and then your timing of your sleep. That these things are the predictor of what your body fat percentage will be. So a lot of you are frustrated because you eat a low carb, a ketogenic, a paleo, a carnivore, real food type of diet. You don't cheat. You don't do anything wrong, and yet still you have body fat. And especially you ladies, it's very frustrating. I know, I hear from you all the time that you just wish you could get the body fat to just get in line. Well, maybe what I'm going to share today will give you a little bit of a clue about how you can get there. So I hope this is encouraging to you guys today. So you guys ready? So this was published in the January 2021 journal or issue of the journal Nutrients. I've done several Jimmy Rants study breakdowns of the journal Nutrients. Definitely one of those journals to keep an eye on. And it was from a group of Colorado researchers, bunch of them here. There's like 8 or 10 names of people that were involved with this research, but out of the University of Colorado. Looks like Yeah, mostly University of Colorado, Colorado School of Public Health, Colorado State University, Health and Exercise Science. So they went all over the board. Elizabeth Thomas is the lead researcher. And the name of the study, you guys, later meal and sleep timing predicts higher body fat percentage. So people always say, will you tell us the title of the study? So I know it's backwards, but I just articulated it and I will say it one more time so you can hear it. If you want to look this up, it's free online. Just go do a search for nutrients. That's the name of the journal. And then later meal and sleep timing predicts higher percent body fat. That's the name of the study. All right, so let's get into the abstract. So if you're new to hearing about studies, the abstract is where they kind of give an overview of what they did in the study, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of what's in the study. Accumulating evidence suggests that later timing of energy intake, which they're calling EI in the study, that just means calories, is associated with an increased risk of obesity. In this study, 83 individuals with overweight and obesity underwent assessment of a 7-day period of data collection, including measurements of body weight and body composition. They did a DEXA scan, and 24-hour measures of this thing called EI, which we talked about earlier, energy intake. And the way they did that was they took pictures of their food. Sleep, using actigraphy, and physical activity with wearing physical monitors of activity. For 7 days they did this. Relationships between BMI, body mass index, and the percent of body fat using DEXA scan, with meal timing, sleep, and this PA, the physical activity, was examined. Listen to this, for every 1 hour later start of eating, there was a 1.25 unit increase in the percent of body fat. Now, stick with me. I know numbers are hard to follow when you're hearing them. Go look up this study, but stick with me. We're going to interpret it here in a minute. A 1.25 unit increase in percent body fat. For every 1 hour later midpoint of the eating window, there was a 1.35 unit increase in percent body fat. For every 1 hour increase in the end of your sleep period, there was a 1.64 unit increase in percent body fat. So, later meal and sleep timing were also associated with having low levels of physical activity. In summary, the later timing of your energy intake, the later timing of eating, and sleep, later timing of sleep, are both associated with having higher body fat and lower levels of physical activity in people with overweight and obesity. So isn't that interesting? The later you eat your meal, the later you go to sleep, the less physical activity, and then the result of all those behaviors results in higher percent of body fat. That's basically the crux of what they found in the study. So if you're just joining us, yes, we got another new study. Jimmy loves breaking down studies for you guys. So we have a new January 2021 study in the journal Nutrients out of researchers out of Colorado, and they say, and they conclude, that late eating and sleep timing are what determine your body fat percentage. So I thought this was really fascinating information that may help you in your own health journey. All right, let's continue and get to the introduction. Circadian timing of daily behaviors such as energy intake, sleep, and physical activity has emerged as a key factor in the regulation of body weight. Let's stop for a second. Circadian timing of these daily behaviors. So usually when you hear about circadian, people think of circadian rhythm for their sleep, and that is incredibly important. I have worked very hard on my own circadian sleep rhythm, and it's manifested in really good quality sleep. So when I sleep, and I share my sleep data every day on my stories here on Instagram, when I sleep, I'm aiming to get really good REM and deep sleep. And if I get those things, then I know my day is going to go well the next day. But have you ever thought about the circadian rhythm of your energy intake? Think about this: when you were a crappy garbage eater, what was your circadian rhythm on energy intake? It was messed up because it was probably all over the board because you were stoking the flames of all of your body's hormonal responses to that crap you were eating. But once you start eating more of a ketogenic diet, what happens? You fall into what? Maybe a 1 to 2 meal a day type of routine. And that's your circadian rhythm with your eating. So again, I want you to think about this circadian timing is all about not just sleep, but it's all about your eating. There is kind of this, like there was a long time where I would basically eat at 8 o'clock in the morning and I would eat again at say 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And that was my meals for the day. And guess what, guys? That's still pretty much how I eat now. Now, if there's a day that I wake up that I'm not hungry at a certain time and I don't eat because of the clock. I only eat because my satiety signals tell me to. But you fall into a circadian rhythm with your eating. And your physical activity. Like people think, oh, I have to go to the gym. I have to like make myself go and this after work. And it's not according to your body saying, hey, dude, I got some extra energy. Let's go work it off. And so I'm working on that one. I've got the sleep down. I've got the eating down. I'm working on that, finding that and feeling that circadian rhythm in physical activities. But all of these are important in the regulation of your body fat and your body weight. This internal circadian timing system in mammals is entrained to a 24-hour cycle through light signals reaching a master clock in the hypothalamus, and has evolved to align activities and behaviors, things like being awake, physical activity and eating, sleep, inactivity, and fasting with the day and night cycle. So everything about what you do in your life is all about that sun up, sun down, moon up, moon down, sun up, sun down, moon up, moon down. We're on this constant 24-hour cycle, and we have pretty much entrained our bodies, or should entrain our bodies, to go according to that cycle. Because metabolic processes are entrained to these circadian rhythms, food intake at inappropriate circadian times may lead to some adverse metabolic outcomes, including developing obesity, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. And I see several practitioners on here across all my platforms. You know that if your client comes to you and they say, look, I'm having trouble, I'm gaining weight and I don't know why, and then you start digging deeper and you see their food is good, then you need to start looking at maybe they're timing their food outside of the circadian rhythm of their eating window. And I've found in my experience for many years eating low carb and ketogenic that falling into that circadian rhythm of eating is so important, just as much as falling into the circadian rhythm of sleeping and falling into the circadian rhythm of your physical activity. So if you've got a difficult client, you're trying to figure out why can't they shed those pounds? Why are they trending towards higher body fat percentage when they're doing everything right? This, according to the new science, might be the reason. This is encouraging to me because I have fought some body fat coming back on my body, and I think it may have to do with my circadian rhythm as it relates to physical activity. So I'm going to work on that aspect, but just be cognizant of the energy intake, meal timing, sleep, and physical activity circadian rhythms. All right, let's get back to the study. And if you just joined us, yes, Jimmy's getting all nerdy with the studies today. A January 2021 study in the journal Nutrient says late eating and sleep timing will determine your body fat percentage. Really, really fascinating stuff. Dietary patterns have emerged and changed over recent decades with a shift towards more frequent eating events over a longer period of time throughout the day. I wonder why people eat more often. They tell us, oh, you got to eat every 2 hours or your blood sugar's going to be out of whack. Well, yeah, if you eat foods that exacerbate blood sugar, that's exactly what happens. So, can you blame people for changing their dietary pattern when you've been pushing the very thing that's making them have to eat more often? Findings from a number of epidemiological and observational studies report associations between breakfast skipping and obesity, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. Well, the reason those studies exist, and I've talked about those studies even before I had Jimmy Rants, many years I've been talking about these so-called don't skip breakfast or you'll be obese and have type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease. Well, what they find is people that skip breakfast tend to be hungry, so that when they eat later, they tend to eat more energy than they would have had they had a meal in the morning. Plus, always the elephant in the room, what they're eating in the studies or what they're skipping in the studies is always some carbohydrate-based breakfast. And so they're trying to make the point, oh, see, this is why you need to have your oatmeal or your cereal or whatever you're having in the morning, because you'll end up gaining weight, blah, blah, blah. But they never talk about the quality of the food that you eat in those studies. Night shift work is also associated with a later and more prolonged eating window, and food intake at night is linked to obesity, despite it being similar calories. Some reports suggest dietary quality in shift workers, while others do not show a difference. So just looking at the other studies. But yeah, a third shift. I used to be an overnight disc jockey at a Christian radio station back in the 90s. I was the guy that was on from like 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. the next morning. So I know all about that. And I know all about how that messing up of your sleep timing does increase your appetite. Like I could not get enough food. And I was very much a crappy garbage eater in my 20s. And yeah, so I can personally attest to that. In addition, a higher percent of total daily energy intake consumed during the evening and night has been associated with greater risk of overweight and obesity. I personally try not to eat too much past 3 to 4 o'clock. That's kind of the window that I sort of fall into naturally. My circadian rhythm of eating falls into that. And what that does is that enables me to digest all that food, have it completely digested. Generally takes about 3 to 4 hours for most of the digestion process to take place, so that by the time I hit that pillow at night, for me somewhere around 7, 8 o'clock when I go to bed, then I'm going to be able to sleep well because I've let that food digest. A lot of people, they eat late or they'll stuff food in their mouth really fast, like within an hour of bedtime. And I'm thinking, how in the world do you eat an hour before bedtime? And you'll notice this, and I notice it when I've done looking at the data, looking at the Oura Ring data, and I've eaten later because I kind of had to. When I've eaten later, almost always destroys my sleep in the REM and in the deep sleep. Always. And you can try that for yourself. If you have some kind of a Fitbit or Oura Ring or something that tracks sleep, try that as an experiment. You know what it is normally. Then try eating something like an hour before bedtime and watch what happens to your sleep quality. It goes to the pot. Moreover, in 2 studies examining timing of energy intake in individuals participating in weight loss interventions, participants who consumed more calories in the morning as compared to the evening lost more weight. Did you catch that? Eat more early in the day, less later in the day, and guess what? That results in weight loss. And that is something that I try to do. I try to stack calories early in the day, get my just enough nutrition in the afternoon to squelch hunger, and then I'm good to go. And so they have studies that show that. Despite the fact that they engage in similar caloric intake and similar physical activity. Meal timing is everything. Thus, there is considerable evidence to suggest that inappropriate timing of the energy intake plays an important role in the risk for obesity. So if that's never been on your radar screen before, let it be now. Let it be known that, okay, if you eat early in the day, and eat most of your calories earlier in the day, that's going to serve you well in a lot of ways. Concurrent with the shift towards a longer daily duration of eating, there is also evidence of reduced sleep duration and quality over the past several decades. And I've noticed that too. Like the sleep duration, people tend to go to bed later. And then they have to get up early, go to work, take care of family responsibilities. And so I don't know when it happened in our society that we decided to sacrifice sleep. And I've even heard some well-meaning entrepreneur kind of gurus out there. Oh, if you want to achieve your goals, you must sacrifice sleep. And I'm like, you must be crazy. For me, I put a prime on my sleep. And I know that my sleep is going to make me productive when I'm awake. And my quality of sleep and getting it and prioritizing it is going to always result in better results for me and how I feel, ostensibly in my ability to shed body fat and all the other things that we look for. In fact, today is a perfect example. I was wide awake at my normal time of 2:30 this morning. And I have an event that I'm going to today that I know I'm going to be up a little bit later than I normally do. So that's going to happen at the events at 7 o'clock and it's over by 10 o'clock. So I won't be able to hit the bed till maybe 10:30 tonight. That's way later than I normally do. So what did Jimmy do to try to help with that? I stayed in the bed 2.5 more hours to make sure I got a little bit extra sleep. Now, will it help? I'm sure that when my normal time to go to sleep comes, I'm going to be tired. I'm going to have to kind of suppress it a little bit. And it's, every once in a while, it's no big deal. It's when you do it every day and you sacrifice that sleep when it starts to add up. Prospective studies have found associations between short sleep duration and the increased risk of obesity, diabetes, hypertension, cardiovascular disease, and weight gain. So this is why I like the Oura Ring and I like the Fitbit that measures sleep, because you get a quantification of exactly what your sleep is doing. Because it's not just in the bedtime. Some people say, well, I get good sleep. I stay in the bed for 8 hours. How you feeling? Oh, I'm so grouchy when I wake up. I don't know why. And then you kind of have them check it using a Fitbit or Oura Ring or something. They're like, oh my God, I have no REM or deep. I toss and turn all night. I get up and I don't even realize it. So it's not just duration in the bed. It's actually what are you doing when you're in the bed. Sleep timing has been less studied in the literature, but reports from some of the studies have shown associations between later chronotype, which is the propensity of an individual to sleep at a particular time of day, and higher body mass index and poor dietary quality. So the later you stay up and the later you push past what your body knows it needs to go to sleep at, the higher propensity for you to want to eat more crappy garbage as I call it, and your body's going to trend towards a higher BMI. Is this fascinating stuff, you guys? While accumulating evidence suggests associations between the later meal and sleep timing and an increased risk of obesity, the majority of these studies are based on self-reported rather than objectively measured exposures and outcomes, which I love that they give recognition that, okay, this is data, but it's not good data, and we need that more objective measurement, which is what they're doing in this study that I'm talking about today. Thus, the goal of this study was to evaluate associations between objectively measured free living meal and sleep timing and BMI, body fat, and variables implicated in body weight regulation, including energy intake, which is calories, dietary quality, physical activity, and sedentary behavior in adults who are already overweight or obese. We hypothesized that later timing of both food intake and sleep would be associated with a higher BMI and body fat, as well as poor dietary quality choices and reduced physical activity. So let's get into the study itself. Thank you guys for being here. If you joined us late, brand new study, Nutrients, January 2021 study. Late eating, sleep timing determine your body fat percentage. And we're just getting into the good part where we're looking at who is in this study. Healthy adults between the ages of 18 and 50, they all have a BMI that range between 27 and 45 kilo, and weight stable, which means a plus or minus 5% change over the past 6 months. So in other words, they're overweight or obese, but they're not actively gaining or losing weight. They're kind of weight stable. With a self-reported typical eating duration of around 12 hours per day. So these people were recruited for a behavioral weight loss trial. They were excluded if they had a family history of heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, thyroid, renal, hepatic disease, dyslipidemia, high cholesterol, and other cholesterol issues, or other medical conditions that would affect weight and lipid metabolism. If they worked the night shift over the previous 6 months, they were also excluded. If they have night eating syndrome, you know, these people that like sleep eat at night, that's a thing, you know, sleepwalking and going to the fridge. And like, I thought that was the most bizarre thing the first time I ever heard it. People that eat in their sleep late at night, or binge eating behavior. So if they have any of those conditions, you guys, they excluded them because they wanted like real people to be in the study, typical people, not people with these confounding variables. And in a study, you try to control every confounding variable that you possibly can. Women who were pregnant, breastfeeding, or planning to become pregnant were also excluded. Data from a 7-day baseline assessment period are going to be presented in this study. For reasons related to feasibility, the 7-day measurements were not performed in a consistent phase of the menstrual cycle for women, which we know that also impacts body fat. So just be aware of that limitation of this study, and they're admitting it right here in the materials and methods section. The Colorado Multiple Institutional Review Board approved the study protocol, and all of the participants provided written informed consent prior to participation in the procedures. This study was conducted in accordance with the principles in the Declaration of Helsinki. Okay, let's get into the design of the study. So in the screening following written informed consent, each participant underwent a history and physical exam with the study physician, and they completed screen laboratory evaluations, things like HbA1c, which is kind of a good 3-month blood sugar marker. Lipid panel, so they got the total cholesterol, HDL, triglycerides, VLDL, and LDL. Comprehensive metabolic panel, that's called a CMP, which is just a bunch of numbers, typical standard when they do a physical on people at your doctor's office. TSH, which is the one thyroid marker that they tend to run. It's incomplete just to run TSH, but in this study, they decided only to run it. And then they did a pregnancy test just to make sure. I wonder if they did it on the guys. Probably not. So pregnancy test just to make sure, again, that they don't have any pregnant women in the study. All right, so let's look at the anthropometrics. Height without shoes to the nearest centimeters using a stadiometer was measured once at baseline. Fasted morning weight in light clothing was measured to the nearest kilo using a digital scale. And assessment of body composition, total body mass, percent fat was performed using a DEXA scan. So I've had these DEXA scans. They're pretty cool. If you've never had a DEXA scan, guys, go see if you can find this dual energy X-ray absorptiometry. I can't say that last word, but DEXA, that's what it's called. DEXA. Meal timing. Photographic food records were used to determine the meal timing. Participants used personal smartphones to take pictures of all calorie-containing food and beverages consumed during the 7-day period. So that's the cool part of everybody owning a smartphone now, is you can take pictures. I envision in future studies that not only will you be able to take pictures of your food, I suppose, and send it to researchers, but there will be an app developed where you just like show the camera what's on your plate, and it will analyze all the macronutrients and calories. That's coming, you guys. Just, it's cool. Technology is going to help science progress so many ways. And so it's good that they were able to utilize what the current technology is. A picture of the selected meal was taken before eating, and a second picture was taken at the end of the eating period. They're trying to see, did they eat it all? And if they left anything on their plate, they have to parse out what they think they didn't eat, and da-da-da. Participants were provided with detailed instructions regarding methods of food photography. The serving plate occupied the entire field of view. They have to be taken at a 45-degree angle, so the depth of food could also be estimated. After taking the photographs, participants texted the photographs directly to a secure account that was monitored in real time by the people doing the study. Participants were given instructions to prioritize accurate documentation of the timing of the first and last eating occasion of each day. The timestamps on the photographs were used to determine the meal timing and eating window. For the purposes of meal timing and energy intake quantification, days were considered to start at 4 a.m. Oh, they would hate me because I'm sometimes up at 2 a.m. and to include the following 24 hours through 4 a.m. the next day. Such that food eaten between 12 to 4 a.m. was included within the prior day's eating window. So that's how they do it. That would be clunky. Like, although I don't eat when I wake up at 2 a.m., I still don't eat till like 8 o'clock in the morning. Total duration of the eating window was calculated based on the start time of the first eating episode through the start time of the last eating episode, with eating episodes defined as food or drink containing any amount of calories. The midpoint of the eating window was the clock time of the halfway point between the start and end of the total eating window. So really fascinating, kind of the design of this study. All right, let's get to the energy intake. Photographic food records from a consecutive 3-day period, which included 2 weekdays and 1 weekend day, were used to estimate the energy intake. The 3 days that were chosen to be used for this quantification out of the 7-day data collection were pre-specified based on the timing of the placement of sleep and activity monitors. So once they got sleep monitors, activity monitors on these guys, they wanted to see at that point, that's when they started measuring. So if they were placed on them on Friday, the data collection period started at 4 a.m. on Saturday, so forth and so on. All right, a trained registered dietitian used the pictures to estimate portion sizes using the portion photos of popular foods guide. Dietary intake data were collected and analyzed using the nutrition data system for research software. All right, let's keep going down. All right, so yeah, they talk about how they're measuring the energy expenditure. You can go read the full study if you want to see all of that. I don't want to get stuck too much in the weeds here about the measurements. So that's basically what they're doing. They're using a lot of these tools just to estimate based on the pictures how much they ate, so forth and so on. So then in physical activities, they put this thing called Active Pal, which is an activity monitor on them. Sleep patterns. Each subject kept a written log of sleep and wake times. They wore a wrist actigraphy and light exposure recorder called ActiWatch Spectrum from Philips that documented their free living sleep and wake patterns for 7 days. It also showed the rest intervals, which is the time in the bed, using a standardized hierarchical approach. And then rest intervals were selected based on the combination of an event marker, blah, 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 blah. All right. So the statistical analysis, let's get to that. Meal timing, sleep, and physical activity variables were measured daily for 7 days and then averaged across the week for each subject. Energy intake was measured over 3 days and then averaged for the 3-day period. Subjects with 3-day mean energy intake lower or higher than the cutoff were excluded for energy intake quantification only. All right, so they're just still kind of establishing all the methodology. And if you're wanting to get into some of that, a lot of the studies that I read use similar methodology. I don't want to bore you with the facts. Let's get right down to the results of this study. There were a total of 95 individuals who were screened for participation in the study. 12 of them were excluded. 2 did not meet the inclusion-exclusion criteria. 8 declined once they found out what they had to do. And 2 failed to complete their baseline measurements. In other words, they didn't even come into the office to get the baseline. 83 participants were excluded in the final analysis, or included, in the final analysis. The majority of them were females with obesity. Meal timing, sleep timing, physical activity, and energy intake for all participants was recorded, and showing the timing of energy intake by the day of the week. So they have all the statistical data. Again, go look up this study in Nutrients, January 2021. But they show you all of the data of the people, the demographics in the study. 71 female, which was 86% of the participants, 14% male. 81% of these people in the study were white, 12% were black, 6% Asian, and then there were no American Indian, there were no Island Pacificer, Hawaiian, there was none with more than one race, and then there was one person that they didn't know what their race was because they didn't identify it. Average age 39, average weight 93.8 kilo, BMI 33, these are all averages, 33.7, lean body mass index 53, fat mass 41, and percentage of body fat 43. So these were definitely overweight and obese people. All right. Age was not a significant predictor of BMI or percent of body fat. However, sex was a significant predictor of percent of body fat. I know that makes you ladies really upset because ladies are like, I have all this weight on my body, but think about it from an evolutionary perspective. You were born to pop out babies, and so that makes it where it's a protective measure for you to have more body fat on you. Now, I know that makes a lot of ladies upset because they're like, well, I'm done popping out babies. I want to lose weight now. And it just becomes this mind game you play with yourself. But it is true. You ladies have a harder time than us guys. On average, females had 10.6% higher body fat than their male counterparts. Therefore, statistical models testing significant predictors of percent body fat were adjusted based on your sex. Measures of meal timing, measures of physical activity, and measures of sleep were significant predictors of percent fat after adjusting for the sex of the participant. However, total stepping time, duration of meal eating window, and average midpoint of sleep were not significant after they did the adjustment. All right, so what they found was for every 1 unit increase in MET hours, there was on average 1.56 unit decrease in percent body fat. A lot of this I said in the abstract, so I'm just going to skip ahead, you guys. Energy intake, average start of the eating window, and the average midpoint of the eating window were significant predictors of BMI. However, start of the eating window and midpoint of the eating window were not significant. For every 100 calorie increase in energy intake a day, there was on average a 0.53 increase in the BMI. I wish they had parsed that out a little more than just energy, because 100 calories of a sugary food is far different than 100 calories of a fatty protein, right? Skip ahead because I got more data and I don't want to bore you with all the data. Again, you could go look at that if you want to look at the specific statistical data. All right, let's skip down to the discussion because all that's just charts and I'm not reading charts to you guys on Jimmy Rants. All right, discussion. The main findings of our study are that late timing of energy intake, calories consumed, and sleep predicted a greater percent of body fat, While a few studies have shown that consuming a higher percentage of energy intake in the evening is associated with a greater risk of obesity, these studies utilized dietary recall data, whereas we, in this study, used time-stamped photographs. In other words, they're saying ours is more accurate. We're not relying on the study participant to just the honor system tell us what they ate and when they ate. They actually quantified it using the smartphone technology, which provided a more accurate assessment of the timing. In addition, we used objective measures of physical activity and sleep. Potential mechanisms to explain the effects of meal timing on body weight and composition include effects on energy intake, both the quantity and the quality, physical activity levels or metabolic effects, such as thermic effect of food. As expected, we found that greater total energy intake predicted a higher BMI. However, later meal timing did not correlate with greater total energy intake, fat or carbohydrate intake, suggesting that the mechanism that's underlying the association between later meal timing and the higher BMI is not due to an increase in energy intake alone. Did you catch that? A lot of times our culture says to people who have extra weight on the body, oh, you just eat too many calories. Oh, you're a glutton. You're sneaking in sugary, crappy food, and so therefore that's why you're fat. We now have quantifiable evidence from a highly respected study that meal timing, same food, had they eaten it a few hours before, would not have the effect on their body fat near like it would if they ate it a few hours ago. That makes sense? And so this is big, guys. I hope you're catching the gravity of this research. We need more of this kind of research. And maybe you already fall into that pattern naturally yourself, where you eat most of your calories early in the day and you taper off later in the day. But if you're not doing that before, hopefully you think about that now. In addition, contrary to our hypothesis and to findings from other studies, we did not find that later meal or sleep timing was associated with poorer dietary quality. So they thought it was going to lead them to eating more junk food, but not necessarily. A few studies have not shown a difference in dietary quality in the later chronotypes and night shift workers. Further studies will be needed to better assess the relationship between meal timing and energy intake and diet quality. We also found that later meal timing was associated with lower PA numbers, PA levels, that's physical activity, number of steps, stepping time, which may represent one mechanism by which meal timing could affect body weight and body fat. Makes sense, right? That if you eat later and thus that sacrifices your ability to have physical activity, then it's going to result in higher body weight and body fat. So in the National Weight Control Registry, breakfast consumption was associated with slightly higher self-reported levels of physical activity amongst individuals maintaining weight loss. Several studies using objective measures have shown lower physical activity amongst those who skip breakfast. This is in contrast to a few other studies that have shown associations between later meal timing and higher BMI independent of their physical activity. Overall, there are limited data regarding the effects of meal timing on physical activity, and we need some further studies to look at these relationships. Our study shows that later sleep timing was associated with a higher percent body fat. Several previous studies using actigraphy to measure sleep timing and duration have shown associations between this lower chronotype and higher BMI. While two of these studies showed associations between later sleep timing and poor diet quality, higher consumption of fast food, unhealthy snacks, and full-calorie soda, fewer servings of fruits and vegetables, the other studies showed no difference in the dietary quality. These studies either did not assess activity levels or they showed no difference based on sleep timing. So in contrast, we did not find differences in diet quality, but we did show that later sleep timing was associated with lower levels of activity. In addition, our results show that later sleep timing was associated with later meal timing, So it is possible that the meal timing mediates the effects of the sleep timing on your body fat. Isn't that interesting? So if you eat earlier in the day, you don't eat later in the day, but then you push your sleep timing later, then that mitigates the negative effect of body fat going up based on sleep timing because your meal timing was corrected to earlier in the day. So many moving parts in this study that you think about that, okay, if you're going to be a night owl, don't be a munchy night owl. Finish your eating earlier in the day so that, okay, if you have to stay up a little bit later, it's no big deal. So I'll tell you what, today I'm eating, when Jimmy Rants is over, probably within an hour after Jimmy Rants is over, I will make me a meal. And that will be my last meal of the day. And I'm going to be up, I already told you earlier, I'm going to be up pretty late for me tonight. I probably won't be able to lay down on a pillow until about 10:30 or 11 o'clock tonight. So as such, I'm hoping that pushing it later does not create this effect, and it kind of mitigates the effect because I'm eating earlier. Fascinating, fascinating stuff, you guys. Future studies should evaluate this. We found that duration of the eating window was inversely correlated with the start of the eating window and the end of the sleep period, suggesting those who sleep later started eating later and ate for a shorter period of time during the day. So those of you that tend to extend your sleep period, it could be because you extended your eating period the night before. Shorter duration of the eating window also predicted higher body fat percentage, not significantly so though, suggesting that both delaying the first meal of the day and eating over shorter duration of the day was associated with higher percent body fat. Well, I don't totally agree with that. If you want to eat within a window, and it's a short window, because I know a lot of people do intermittent fasting, where they eat 18:6, 24, even 23:1, the whole OMAD, and they're saying it's associated with a higher level of body fat. I don't agree with that part of this study because we've seen plenty of evidence to the contrary. These findings are consistent with prior evidence linking breakfast skipping, blah, blah, blah. Again, I disagree. Several human studies have evaluated the metabolic effects of short-term time-restricted eating aligned early in the biologic day, finding improvements in glucose homeostasis, insulin sensitivity, and beta cell responsiveness, increased fat oxidation, reductions in blood pressure, and appetite. However, most studies evaluating the effects of longer duration time-restricted eating on weight loss have used self-selected or midday eating windows and have shown only modest weight loss. Well, team at Colorado, get on that. Let's see a study. Don't just say previous studies show. All right, bad boy, you got this hypothesis that you think that happens. Show us an 8 to 16 week time restricted intermittent fasting study. Show us what that would look like. Do all these same parameters you did for this study in a time restricted eating study. I would be very interested in that. Yeah, he got a lot to say about time-restricted eating here in his conclusion, where his study had nothing to do with time-restricted eating. That's interesting. Okay. One potential mechanism by which later meal timing might influence body weight and body composition is through the effects of time, or TEF is what they call it here. Let's see if they describe what TEF means. I didn't see that. See, when they start using these short versions, these letters to describe what they're talking about. Oh, thermic effect of food. That's what TEF is. So several studies have shown that thermal effect of food is lower in the evening and at night than in the morning, and that these differences are explained primarily by circadian influences as opposed to a behavioral thing. Thus, eating closer to bedtime may result in a lower thermal effect of food, contributing to positive energy balance, which might lead to weight gain over time. That's interesting. So the thermal effect of food In other words, how quickly does it get burnt up? And at night, it tends to slow down this thermal effect of food. Meaning, when you eat at night, your body doesn't digest it nearly like it does earlier in the day. And they're saying that this is a suggested mechanism by which you gain weight and have higher body fat percentage. Interesting. Okay, our study is limited by the fact that these data are observational and we are reporting simply on correlations. At least they admit that in their study. Most of these kinds of studies don't admit that. Thus, we cannot definitively conclude on the causal role or the directionality of the relationship between meal or sleep timing and the development of overweight or obesity. In addition, our study is limited by poor quality of energy intake quantification data, which were significantly limited due to the high prevalence of an implausible energy intake. The challenges of quantifying energy intake in free living humans are well known and significant enough that it's been suggested that measures of self-reported energy intake should be abandoned. And I agree with them. Because if you're asking for self-reported, a lot of people, human nature, will have them self-report and lie. They tell the researchers what they want to hear, not what they should hear. Although we hypothesized that the use of photographic food records would increase accuracy of self-reporting of the food, we found that omission of photographs resulted in significant underreporting in terms of the quantity of energy intake while retaining important information on the timing of the eating windows. So some of them didn't send in pictures. I would tell them ahead of time, look, your requirement as a study participant is to always take a picture of your food and send it to us. Why, with everybody having devices in their hands, can they not make that a requirement that you must take the picture? And the moment you don't take a picture, you're immediately out of the study. I don't know why they couldn't have done that. While it may be argued that the high rate of implausible reports could adversely affect our measures of timing of energy intake, it's important to note that we counseled participants to prioritize taking photographs of the first and last meals of the day. Well, they counseled them to prioritize it, but they should have given them consequences. All right. And, they usually pay study participants. You should tell the study participants, so you know what? If you don't send us both morning and night photos, you don't get the $500 or whatever it is. Hit them in the pocketbook, and that's an incentive. Oh man, if I want the $500, just take 2 pictures a day and I get $500? Yeah, and it's just 1 week. It was only 1 week, you guys. So they couldn't even do it for 1 week. I could see if it was a months-long study, but 1 week, pay me $500. I'm doing the pictures all week. I'm putting little frogs around. I'm doing something nice with that because I'm getting paid. All right. Underreporting is frequent when dietary recalls are used and has been observed in other studies. Utilizing photographic food records in order to improve the quality of our energy intake data, we did use this Huang method to establish cutoff values, blah, 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 blah. All right, let's get to the conclusions, and we're almost done, you guys. We're at the very end. In conclusion, in summary, our data demonstrates that later meal and sleep timing were associated with higher percent body fat in this sample of individuals who are overweight and obese. These findings are important given the recent shift towards frequent eating occasions over longer periods of time throughout the day, as well as the recent popularity of time-restricted eating using later eating windows. In addition, we found that later meal and sleep timing were associated with having lower levels of activity, a finding that has not previously been reported in other studies. Taken together with data from previous trials, our findings underscore the importance of the timing of daily activity and weight regulation and the need to consider the timing of energy expenditure, physical activity, and sleep in the design and evaluation of weight loss interventions. Pretty good study, huh? Let's see if there's any information. It was funded by the NIH, the National Institutes of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases. Trying to see if there's any conflicts. No conflicts of interest declared. So pretty cool, right? Who knew that the timing of your eating and the timing of your sleep could have such a profound impact on body fat percentage? I certainly hope this group continues to do more research, and I hope they do take me up on my offer to do a study on intermittent fasting, because they did seem to kind of poo-poo it a little bit in their analysis there. But I want to see what you guys have to say, so we're going to come here first to Instagram, then over to Twitch, then over to Facebook, finally over to YouTube. Thank you all for being here today on Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. See what you have to say about this one. Joshua says it's extremely interesting when you become aware of how food and activity affects your body. It is. And I think it's a progression, Joshua, that first you learn that carbs are not as great as they've been made out to be by all these mainstream nutritional health professionals, namely dietitians, registered dietitians. And so that's where you start. Maybe you start with real food. And then as you add in these variables, you start to go, oh, I wonder if I should add in a period of intermittent fasting. So then you kind of do that. Oh, okay. I wonder if I should titrate down on my eating so I don't eat so late. Okay, and you do that. And it's a progression. You keep adding and building on top of all the knowledge that you have. So definitely a part of the process. Temple, who is one of the nutritionists out there helping her clients, she says, this is so good. Thank you, Temple. I thought about people like you when I was reading this study, because it's like, I know you have clients that get frustrated and they're like, why, Temple? Why can't I lose weight? Why am I still fat? Why do I still have body fat? I'm doing everything you're telling me to do. Well, this might be another key. Oh my God, the 2-hour eating schedule is bogus. Yeah. Eat every 2 hours. That's what they told us. My whole life I heard that. You don't want your blood sugar to go down. Well, yeah, if it goes like this and this and this and this and this and this. And then I go keto and it's beautiful. Cariana says, I have no issues with eating late. What I can't seem to do is work out fasted. I work too early. Yeah, I have a little bit of trouble with fasted workouts. I know they say that you burn more fat when you work out fasted. I get very dizzy, very lightheaded when I try to do it fasted. And of course, when I work out, it's like high intensity, flipping tractor tire and other things. And so maybe it's the kind of workout in that fasted state. I don't know. You adjust to what you are. But that's interesting. You have no issues with eating late. I wonder if there are people who have faster metabolisms, that maybe that thermal effect of food is not impacted in people like you versus people with more insulin resistance and metabolic syndrome. Maybe that's the X factor. Again, these researchers didn't underscore. Joshua says, I know that many kids' sports and other activities end up being in the late afternoon and evening. That pushes supper back and makes people stay up later. You're right. That's exactly what happens. You mean they did not give them the task to recall how many steaks they ate for a whole year? No, this is only a 1-week study, so I think they legit were trying to get them to take the pictures of their food. I've gone back and forth on some of this stuff. I've heard the first meal anchors your circadian rhythm. I'm just not hungry in the morning. Yeah, most people who eat a ketogenic diet and are listening to their satiety signals, you're not hungry really in the mornings. And I used to be a not eat till noon or 1 kind of guy. I found that my circadian rhythm of eating actually did go back a little bit. And now I can comfortably eat at like 8 o'clock in the morning. And I enjoy that. And I eat a hearty meal at 8 o'clock in the morning. And then my second meal tends to be around 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And then that's pretty much my meal. Those 2 meals, my meals for the day. And then I go to bed somewhere between 7 and 8 o'clock at night. All right, thank you, Instagram. We're going to pop over here now and see if there's anybody on the Twitch app. Do I want to become famous? Well, I already have a spam person giving me a link. I wonder if there's a way to delete. Nope. There's not. Oh, come on, Twitch. You got to give me a chance to block these weirdos. Oh, there we go. Delete. And ban. I got to ban my first person on Twitch. Yeah, baby. Oh, fun. All right, let's go over where there's real people, not people spamming me, on Facebook. See what you guys have to say. Well, darn, I'm a night muncher, says Candace. Well, Candace, don't beat yourself up. If you're a night muncher and you're not seeing negative effects, then it's okay. But if you're seeing negative effects and you're like, I can't figure it out, and yet you're eating late at night, this could be a key. So look at this as a good thing. I'll challenge myself for the next 3 days to stop eating after 7 p.m. What time do you go to sleep? So if you stop eating by 7 p.m., what time is your bedtime? I often tell people, stop eating 4 hours before you go to bed. That way you can have plenty of time to digest. I'm already OMAD by nature. It's usually just late by the time I remember that I need to eat. Yeah, I would definitely love to know, what time do you go to bed, Candace, if you're still watching. I photograph all of my food, says Candace. Yes, those of us that are influencers, we're used to taking our food all the time. Berkeley says, I find even with intermittent fasting, I do better if I eat earlier in the day, such as a larger meal, or by 3 p.m. for the final meal. Berkeley, you and I are definitely on the same circadian rhythm of our food, so thank you for sharing that. All right, Candace, please tell me what time you go to sleep. 11 to 12. Okay, so if you cut it off at 7, then that's 4 to 5 hours before you go to bed. Yes, please try that. I would be very interested in how that works for you. Thank you, Facebook. Now let's pop over here to the YouTube channel. September says, if I eat before the evening, I have a really hard time not eating and snacking all day, and I end up going over my calories by a lot. Only eating in the evening, I undereat or eat just enough. Now that's interesting. So you know that about yourself, September, so that's good. And I think knowing yourself and knowing who you are, and I'm not trying to say that everybody needs to be an early to bed kind of person, but there is evidence, at least from this study, that there probably is a better plausibility of you doing better if you eat earlier in the day and don't eat so late, no matter what time you go to sleep. So for me, 7 to 8 o'clock, cutting off my eating by 3 o'clock is perfect because it's within 4 hours of me going to sleep. Those of you that go to sleep later, like Candace, may be pushing it a little bit later, but you're still eating earlier as juxtaposed to when you go to sleep. So hopefully this was an interesting study. It was to me, you guys. And that's it for this episode of Jimmy Rants. JimmyRants.com is the website. And as always, you can engage live in the content. Go follow me. I'm over on Instagram right here at Jimmy Rants. Go check it out, you guys. We go Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. So thank you so much for being here today. We also simulcast live on Twitch, where I get spammed, Facebook, and on YouTube. Thank you all for being here today. If you missed the live, you can watch it on the replay on IGTV over at the Jimmy Rants Instagram page. We also put the replay over on YouTube. Type in a keyword Jimmy Rants and you'll find the show. Don't forget my interview, Dr. Brett Hill, all about his book, Rock Bottom. That airs today. It's over on the YouTube channel right now, or you can listen to the podcast, llvlc.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts. And then finally, pop on over to the official website. It is jimmyrants.com, where you can see all the past episodes. So guys, tomorrow is Friday, and you know what that means. Friday is Ask Me Anything Day, so get your questions ready. Anything you want to ask me is fair game. So thank you guys for being here today, and we'll see you again tomorrow.